It's Art Tip Tuesday. How do you know when a painting is finished? This can be one of the biggest challenges of painting, especially when you're beginning. Making that decision depends, of course, on the type of painting it is, whether it's more realistic or abstract. I think there's a difference. And obviously, I think abstracts can be a little more difficult to determine. The good news is that it gets easier the longer you paint. Now that I've been painting for quite a while and I'm comfortable with my style and I know what I like, I can usually feel when it's finished. It can be easy for me to overwork a painting though, so even when I'm pretty certain that it's done, I like to give it a little time. I'd rather do that than keep going and overdo it. First, I step away from the painting for a while. Totally don't even look at it. Usually I like to do that overnight and give me a little space. Then when I come back to it and look at it with fresh eyes, I might see it differently. Sometimes I wasn't all that crazy about it when I stepped away, but when I come back after some time, I like it better. Sometimes I see things that I didn't notice before. This is also a great strategy when you're stuck and don't know what to do next with a painting. Give it a timeout. Then I put it somewhere in my house where I can just catch glimpses of it as I'm moving around the house. I'm not going to sit and stare at it, but I want to just see it from time to time. If there's anything in it that's really jumping out at me, that's bothering me, then I'll think about how I can correct that. If I feel satisfied when I look at it, then I decide that it's done. I always like to give it at least overnight though before I make that final decision. Having said that, if they stay around here very long, there's always a chance that they'll get painted over and modified or turned into something else completely. But that's a whole other topic. These are the things I look for when I am trying to determine if a painting is finished. Look at the color and value. If everything is kind of in the mid-tone range, there aren't enough brights or darks, then lights or darks, then it's probably not going to feel right and look right. So you got to keep that in mind. Is there enough contrast? Then I look at the composition. Does it look balanced? And when I say balanced, I don't mean symmetrical. I mean, when you look at it, are there any areas that your eyes are drawn to that are too heavy or too cluttered or too empty? Something that just looks and feels off in your composition. For me, it's like an uncomfortable feeling I get when I look at it, more than a conscious thought of, oh, am I looking at lines and shapes and marks? But that comes, I think, after you've been painting for a while. That gets a lot easier. You definitely want to make sure that you step back away from your painting and look at it. That's also a good thing to do in the middle of your painting process. Don't always stay right up there focused on it. You need to step back because it looks different when you get some distance. You can also take a photo with your phone and look at the photo. That's going to give you a different perspective. Also a good thing to do throughout your process. You can look at it in a mirror. Sometimes you'll see things in a different perspective when you get a little distance from it that you wouldn't notice when you were standing there with it right in front of your face. All these things can be really helpful when you're trying to decide if it's finished or to help you recognize areas that you may not be happy with. These are a few things to think about when you're deciding if your painting is finished. But the number one tip that I think I can give you is, when in doubt, give it some time. Take a break, step away. Sometimes my breaks from a painting might be a few hours, it might be a few days, might be a few weeks. It just depends. But I'd rather do that than keep going forward and not be happy with the result. Now, even if you have gone what you feel is too far, you can always keep painting and keep making changes. My philosophy is, it isn't finished until I like it. So if I feel like I've overworked it, I'm not happy with that, but I'm just going to keep making some changes. Maybe I'm going to paint over some things. You add, you subtract. You just keep working it until you feel good about it. If any of you have tips for ways that you can tell when your paintings are finished. I'd love it if you'd share them with me. And let me know if you have any questions.